Hi, everybody. It's Friday afternoon, and I'm recording this message in my office. It's a beautiful day here, 70 to 75 degrees and sunny. I hope maybe you've been out and enjoyed some of it. By the time you hear this message, it'll be Sunday. It might be raining and not so nice, but it's still Memorial Day weekend. It's not the typical Memorial Day, but I hope you're still enjoying the holiday with your family. I hope we're together soon. I want to begin my message today with a little quiz. Let's see how you do. The category is going to be who said it? Who said it? Give me liberty or give me death. That was Patrick Henry. Who said it? I have a dream. That was Martin Luther King Jr. Who said it? It's not what your country can do for you, it's what you can do for your country. That was President John Kennedy. Who said it? One small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind. Well, that was Neil Armstrong, the first man to walk on the moon. All of these things from so many years ago demonstrate the importance of words. You see, they're words we remember because they communicate important events. Abraham Lincoln probably gave his greatest speech at Gettysburg. It had been a terrible battle. 3,000 Union soldiers had been killed. Another 15,000 were wounded, another 5,000 were missing. And so Lincoln returned there to commemorate what had happened. In 271 words, he gave one of the most famous speeches of all time, which told not only about the tragedy at Gettysburg, but about the future of the nation. And we still remember it today. You see, words are very important. And that's what I want to talk about for a few minutes today. In Proverbs 18:21, the Bible says the tongue has the power of life and death. You know that's literally true. In some cases, someone could be in a capital case and they could receive a death sentence. So literally the judge's words could be life or death. But in a broader sense, words bring life to people. In other words, they enrich, they encourage, they build up. Or they can bring death in the sense that they're destructive and they tear down. For a few moments, let's think about the words that we say. In Proverbs 25 and verse 11, the Bible says, "A word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in settings of silver." Sue used to have a bracelet that she wore, which was made of gold chain and had little silver ornaments attached. It just was a beautiful bracelet. Gold and silver are like that. They're very attractive. They're pleasing, aren't they? As well as they can be costly. Do you know that our words can be the same way? The Bible is saying that our words can be wonderful. And people will want to hear our words. How do we make words like that? We're going to focus on Ephesians chapter 4 and verse 29. There Paul writes, "Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen." Listen to the Good News translation. Do not use harmful words, but only helpful words, the kind that build up and provide what is needed, so that what you say will do good to those who hear you. Let's think for a few minutes about what Paul is saying here. First of all, he is saying that our speech should build others up, and that's what we want to do. I like to illustrate that by using the example of a great stone building. A great stone building. We've probably seen some of the great cathedrals, perhaps some of the county buildings are made that way many years ago. If you were going to construct a great building like that, what kind of stones would you like to use? Well, of course you say, well, I want the best stones. I need stones that are really solid. You wouldn't want to have stones that you saw were crumbling because you know that would threaten the future of the building. No, you want the building to be solid. It's the same way with our words. We want to build up. We want to make people strong. We want to make our relationship strong. And how do we do that? We do that with solid, strong words. Well, we don't choose poor stones, but sometimes people choose poor words. And we don't want to use those words. What kind of words am I talking about? Sometimes people use inappropriate words. Inappropriate words. You know what I'm talking about. Sometimes people use bad language. They curse. They swear. Jesus said in Matthew 12:36, what comes out of what comes out of a person's mouth defiles him. Do you understand what he's saying there? The things that we say really make a difference, because if we say inappropriate, wrong things, they corrupt us, they defile us, they make us sinful, they make us impure. Really, what Jesus is saying is that our words are a sign of what's inside of us, and if sinful words are coming from our mouth, then there must be sin in our hearts. And of course, that brings judgment or condemnation upon us. In Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 4, Paul wrote, don't use dirty or foolish or filthy words. Instead, say how thankful you are. That's a much better choice, isn't it? We shouldn't be fooled. Young people don't be fooled because some great athlete curses or uses profanity. That doesn't make it cool. It just shows it's a sign of ignorance. So we need to take those words out of our vocabulary. Sometimes people use opinionated words. Opinionated words. What do I mean by that? I mean, they're using their words always to tell what they think. They're always expressing their thoughts. They're not really listening to anyone else. This is really a problem, I think, in this time of politics, isn't it? I saw a sign the other day that said something like this: everybody has a right to their opinion, and you have a right to ignore it. And surely that is true. We shouldn't get too carried away with our opinions, and particularly about politics. Politics is a little bit like fish. It's great for a little while you're eating it, but you need to get rid of it soon because it starts to smell. Isn't that really true? And what about words? Words people use to tear down others. Some people are always criticizing or attacking, hurting other people with their words. And that's certainly inappropriate. Jesus said in Matthew chapter 12, I tell you, on the day of judgment, people will give account for every careless word they speak. For by your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned. We may not like it, but Jesus really doesn't give any middle ground, does he? He says we're either justified by our words or we're condemned by our words. In other words, our words tell who we really are, and God knows that. And if we are saying the wrong things, we'll be held to account for that. On the other hand, we're justified. Our words show who we really are, and God will bless and reward us for using the right words. Well, back to the illustration of the building. We want good stones to build, don't we? And so we're not going to use any stones that have cracks in them. Well, if you use stones with cracks, you get that building up, and soon those cracks would start to spread, and the whole building could fall. In the same way, our words don't need to have cracks. What do you mean, Gary? Our words need to be trustworthy. Trustworthy. Listen to this. Trustworthy words are the sign of people who are worthy of trust. I'll say that again. Trustworthy words are the sign of people who are worthy of trust. When we say something, it needs to be true. We're just not talking to talk. We're not just telling stories. We're not spreading rumors. We're not spreading gossip. Surely you've known somebody who had the reputation You might say about them, well, you can't believe anything that he says. Why is that? Because he's not careful with the words that he uses. And so our words need to have the quality of truth. They need to be trustworthy. People can take them and count on them, just as you need that solid stone without a crack in a building. Let me tell you about another crack. Sometimes a crack in people's words are when they make promises that they don't keep. Ecclesiastes chapter 5 says, "It's better not to vow than to make a vow and not fulfill it. Do not let your mouth lead you into sin." Now, there's some wise advice. Do you know our mouths can lead us into sin? That's happened to me. It's happened to you too, hasn't it? So, Solomon's giving wise counsel. Be careful where your mouth takes you. Sometimes we do that by keeping it or by just using fewer words. But he also says we need to be careful about making promises. Sometimes there are individuals who make promises that they never intend to keep. We can't do that. We have to be careful with the words that we use. Another important thing about stones is that we have to have stones for the building that are the right shape. You know, it's interesting how this process takes place. Uh, Quarrymen go and they locate sandstone, limestone, whatever it is, great sheets of rock, and they cut out these big blocks of stone. When they cut out these big blocks of stone, they move on to men who are called sawyers. What they do is they cut these blocks into cubits. These are six-sided shaped figures that can be used. They're cut with carbide tip saws. And once they are cut, then they're sent on to men who are called banker masons, who actually shape these blocks of stone into the exact shapes that are needed in the building. They know precisely where that stone is going to go. And then finally, it is the fixer mason who places and attaches the stone in the building. Quite a process, isn't it? You see, you have to have just the right stones in just the right places for that building to stand and to be strong. In the same way, Paul is saying that our words need to be appropriate. We need to use the right words at the right time. You know, there are some times when things just aren't appropriate. You don't go to a funeral and begin telling jokes. You don't go to the hospital to visit someone suffering there in a bed and start talking about all your personal problems. Both of those are inappropriate. So we need to say the right things. In Colossians chapter 4 and verse 6, we read, "Let your speech always be with grace, as though seasoned with salt, so that you may know how you should respond to each person." I like that. Let your speech be seasoned with grace. What is grace? Grace is the goodness, the kindness, the mercy of God. And that's the way our speech should be. It should be with grace, full of kindness, goodness, mercy. That's the way our words should be remembered. He says, as though seasoned with salt. We understand this. You throw the hamburgers on the grill, and what's probably the first thing that you do? Why, you salt them, because that's what gives them the flavor. If no salt, they won't taste very good, will they? And so you season them so they'll taste so good. Do you know we can season our words? We can pick and choose the words that will be helpful to others. What are you serving to others with your words? Maybe there are some words we need to get rid of. Paul says there should be nothing unwholesome, but only what builds up. Well, the second thing Paul says is our speech must meet the needs of others. Well, how do we do that? The first thing we need to do is we need to learn how to listen. Learn how to listen. People are not naturally good listeners. There was a study done recently of salespeople, and they found that salespeople usually are talking 75% of the time when they're talking with a customer. However, they also discovered that successful salesmen only talk about 45% of the time, which means 55% of the time they are listening. Well, why would that make such a big difference? It's obvious, because when they're listening, they find out what the needs are of the customer, and then they can explain how they can satisfy those needs. Often, for many of us, we're not talking and we seem to be listening, but are we really? Research has shown that in the times when we're supposed to be listening, probably only about 10% of the time we are really focused on what the other person is saying. The Bible says in James 1:19, "My dear brothers, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen and slow to speak." You've heard it said, we have two ears but only one mouth. So maybe that's telling us something. We should be listeners and not always speakers. When we don't listen to other people, we're really cheating ourselves, because people have so much to tell us, so much to offer. I love to have conversations with people if they'll just tell about themselves and their experiences. They're so interesting. I've enjoyed so many people learn so much that way. But we also miss the needs of the person we're talking to. You see, conversation isn't just about telling people what is on our mind, but it's finding out where they are and what their needs might be. Then we can speak in a good and a helpful way. We need to learn to listen. But what is it that we need to say? Let me suggest three things you could include in your words and your conversation. First of all, try to give helpful information. Proverbs 20 verse 15 says, "Lips that speak knowledge are a rare jewel." I like that. And isn't it true? Lips that speak knowledge are a rare jewel. There's a lot of words out there. There's a lot of talking, but how much of it is really of any benefit? But when we say something that really has knowledge attached to it, it's meaningful, it's helpful, that helps others. They'll benefit from our conversation. So when you can, give helpful information. Second of all, include your faith. Include your faith. Colossians 3:16 says, "Let the word of Christ dwell in you richly, as you teach and admonish one another with all wisdom." First of all, it says the word of Christ dwells in us. And I hope that's true. If it's in us, then we can share it with others and we can help them. It says admonish, encourage other people with the word of Christ that's inside of you. Oh, so often, just a word or two of faith can make so much difference in another individual's life. Do you ever do that? Do you ever encourage them? You ever talk about your faith in the Lord and tell them how faith can help them? A third thing we need to do is to encourage. Encourage. Proverbs 16 and verse 24 says, "Kind words are like honey, sweet to the soul, healthy for the body." That is so true. Encouragement. Encouragement is saying, "I believe in you. I know you'll get through whatever difficulty it is. I know you can accomplish whatever you're trying to achieve. I know you can do it." We all need encouragement, don't we? If we need encouragement, then we should be willing to give it. Paul says in Ephesians 4:29, "Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building up others according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen." The other night we were watching the news. There was a report of a man who was in ICU, dying from the COVID virus. He was older. His family wasn't able to see him, and so they assembled outside the hospital building near the ICU, where there were large windows, and there were a number of people in the family. There must have been 8 or 10 people gathered there. And every day they would come to that place beside those windows, and the nurses from the ICU would come with their mask on, and they wrote on signs which they held up, telling the family about their father's condition. They had done this for some time when one day they came with signs that they didn't want to show, but the signs say that their father had passed away. but they also said that he was at peace. Well, this was obviously devastating to the family. But that family appreciated so much what those nurses had done every day. So after their father was gone, they continued to return to the same place, to those windows. And when the nurses came, they held up signs telling the nurses how much they appreciated them. You see, that's what our words can do. They can build others up. I hope this week you'll think about your words, the things that you say. You know, we often say we are the hands and the feet of Christ, but sometimes we need to be the mouth of the Lord as well. Speak the things that He would have us to say. Be a blessing to others. And I hope God blesses you this week.